So I guess we've all heard it now, both from us and from other outlets. RTX 5000 series laptops, well, in general, they're not that great. They're too expensive, and not only that, they don't offer enough performance increases versus the previous generation in order to justify their premiums. But things might be changing. Look, we typically monitor driver evolution here at Hardware Canucks for laptops and for desktops. And the latest driver revisions for RTX 5000 series laptops, they have changed quite a few things behind the scenes. And I wanted to get to that in this video because we have noticed some sometimes pretty significant performance increases. But is that going to be enough to actually make these things look any better versus the previous generation? So let me set the stage here. One of the main issues we and other reviewers encountered was a pretty big discrepancy in GPU power levels between the RTX 5000 series laptops and the RTX 4000 series devices they're meant to replace. I mean, some of these new 2025 laptops were seeing upwards of 20 watt deficiencies, and that's a pretty big deal. You see, the metrics are pretty simple. Feeding the GPU with additional power opens up more frequency headroom for the core and memory, among other things, which in turn can boost in-game clock speeds and, of course, increase performance. But there is a flip side to that equation. You feed a laptop with more power and two things happen. Heat typically increases, and also the laptop tries to compensate for that additional heat by increasing fan speeds, and that can make some of these things pretty loud. So were these lower TGPs by design, or did this simply boil down to a lack of optimizations? Well, it turns out NVIDIA's doing something about it, since buried in the release notes for one of their latest drivers was this little nugget, which seems to admit that yes, there was an issue with GPU power being limited where it shouldn't have been. And to test out if this improves the RTX 5000 series standing, we took the RTX 5090 base SCAR 18 and SCAR 16 with its RTX 5080 out for another spin. The idea here is to compare current performance to what we were getting with the earlier drivers we initially reviewed them on. And I think this kind of video is very, very important because nothing in laptop reviews stays at a constant. Games are updated, drivers are updated, firmware on a lot of these devices gets evolved over time, and that is why we are actually going to be doing more of these videos. But you know what we need more of? It's some of these cases from Thermaltake.
In the vastness of nature, every color tells a story. Matcha green, the color of renewal and fresh beginnings. I mean, take a hint. Hydrangea blue, the hue of tranquility and quiet reflections on how easy it is to work in. Snow white, the essence of purity and crisp air, and having all the hair after the assembly. And black, the depth of mystery shadows, but no mystery to hardware compatibility. This isn't just a stunning ITX enclosure, it's a vibe to shape your mood. The TR100 by Thermaltake. Check it out below.
Okay, so with that out of the way, let's start off with the million-dollar question. Do these drivers actually improve the overall power delivery of these laptops? And they absolutely do. The SCAR 16's RTX 5080 saw its overall consumption go from around 152 watts to 166, with Cyberpunk, Black Myth Wukong, and Starfield all seeing increases of more than 15 watts in our testing. While this is still short of NVIDIA's 175 watt maximum TGP, it's certainly a step in the right direction. Meanwhile, the RTX 5090 and the SCAR 18 got a nearly identical bump upwards in every single game. I mean, this is almost a copy paste of the RTX 5080 results, right down to the average between the two cards being within a single watt. So what this shows us is both GPUs are getting close to peak power, but they're not quite there yet. But does this actually make a difference in the clock speed department? Well, on the RTX 5080 in general, the answer is yes. Some games like Alan Wake, Baldur's Gate 3, and Black Myth see notable boosts, with most titles seeing very little to no improvement. Meanwhile, Rainbow Six and Cyberpunk actually saw very slight frequency regressions. Once the dust settled and all 11 games are averaged out, there's less than a 100 megahertz uplift overall. Moving on to the RTX 5090, and we're seeing even smaller gains, with only 61 megahertz separating the new and old drivers, which pretty much becomes like a rounding error at these frequencies. But it's still interesting to see some games like Black Myth and Indiana Jones go from increases on the RTX 5080 to decreases on this card, but this might actually be due to NVIDIA's game detection algorithms dynamically adjusting speeds based on each game's individual needs. And look, I know what everybody's probably thinking here, and I was thinking the exact same thing. What seems to be happening is NVIDIA's throwing power at the wall to see what sticks, and well, frequencies just aren't being positively impacted by all that much. But there is something we need to discuss here, and that is the ability of most software monitoring tools to properly monitor what is going on behind the scenes. Because there are plenty of other levers NVIDIA could be pulling here, which could account for the higher input power, like tweaking cache speeds, modifying bandwidth, and a bunch of other things. We also have to remember that the RTX 5000 series GPUs adjust their frequencies several thousand times per second. So if these drivers further smoothed out that clock speed response, a lot of the points of improvement might be outside the detection range of our software. One of my main concerns when I first saw the power numbers was that it would lead to higher temperatures, or the laptops would compensate by running their fans at higher speeds. But that just didn't happen. Both the RTX 5090 and 5080 devices had infinitesimal increases in heat and noise, but the sound increase, well, it wasn't perceptible. You wouldn't know it's there unless you have a pretty sensitive sound meter like we do. But regardless of what NVIDIA is using that additional power for, well, the proof is in the pudding. It's in the actual frame rates that these laptops now achieve in games. And that's what we're going to start with the RTX 5080 at 1600p. And I gotta say, it's a bit of a mixed bag here. Even though there are some areas where we saw frequency reductions, there isn't a single game in our testing suite where performance went down. Some saw what amounted to identical performance between driver revisions, while others experienced minor average frame rate uplifts. But there are a few games that had notable increases, with CS2 and a few others being standout examples. Adding 1% lows on top of this tells another story though. Here the drivers had a minimal impact at best, and in some cases, they negatively affected performance. But there is a silver lining. Overall performance increased by about 6%, which is pretty good all things considered. Unfortunately, the 99th percentile frame times only went up by about 2%. And I was sort of hoping that more GPU intensive 4K testing would benefit even more from those power increases, but I was wrong. I mean, sure, Doom, Rainbow Six, and CS2 still saw good overall increases, while Baldur's Gate, Warhammer 3, and Indiana Jones got a bit better too, but everything else, well, it flatlined. And that resulted in a net boost of just about 5%, while the 1% lows saw an even smaller increase. The RTX 5090 laptop, well, it actually fared a bit worse at 1600p. Despite the GPU being given the same injection of power as the RTX 5080, there was actually small frame rate regression in Alan Wake 2, while even the best case situations saw smaller uplifts than the RTX 5080 showed. Other titles did see minor differences, and overall there is a net gain across the board, but it only amounted to about 4% in both averages and 1% lows. Luckily, we aren't seeing any more regressions on the 5090 at 4K, but the benefit of these new drivers is even smaller here. I mean, sure, there's some areas where they show bigger uplifts, but those are highly game specific, and the best it could do is about 10% better overall in Baldur's Gate. So don't ignore these drivers if you have a 2025 gaming laptop with an RTX 5000 series GPU, but also maybe temper your expectations too. So where does this all leave us? Well, look, I'm going to be straightforward here. These drivers are not a silver bullet in any way, shape, or form. They do in no way justify the price increases for 2025 gaming laptops, or at least most 2025 gaming laptops over their predecessors. But what they do end up doing is giving a little bit of hope that the best is yet to come, that NVIDIA is working behind the scenes to improve the overall situation and not just sitting down, doing nothing, and raking in money. I also need to mention that we are putting in an absolute ton of man hours behind the scenes to retest all of the RTX 5000 series laptops we have. And it turns out the benefits of these new drivers aren't just game specific. Their impact varies wildly between devices and even platforms. Like the AMD based laptops barely saw any uplifts whatsoever. And the scars we used for this video, well, they actually came in on the low side for Intel devices, since the Aorus Master 16 and Yoga Pro 9i just flew off the charts compared to the others. And if we take a high level view at frame rates, the overall standing of these laptops isn't affected by all that much, at least not for the RTX 5090. On the other hand, the Scar 16's RTX 5080 has actually now narrowed its gap with the 5090 even further, making it look like a relative bargain compared to the almost $1,500 more expensive device. So if anything, this update might make the RTX 5090 look like an even worse buy than it already was. So yeah, from this point forward, you can rest assured that any result that you see in our charts will be with these new drivers or the newer ones for every single device. Now, we also have to think, is this the end? Will we see additional performance improvements for the RTX 5000 series as they mature? And the answer to that is absolutely, because NVIDIA evidently freed up a little bit of power headroom right now, and there's still more power headroom to access in the future if they feel like they need it. But we're going to be monitoring this situation as time goes on, and if there's additional updates that we need to give you, you can be rest assured that we'll put out another video about it. But anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this quick update about 2025 gaming laptops. Fingers crossed they get even better, but also fingers crossed that the prices come down quite a bit, especially for 5090 models. Anyways, I'm Mike with Hardware Canucks, and I'm going to see you in the next video. Have a great day, guys.